He pulled his arm away from me in front of almost 200 people at his firm's winter gala and said, "Don't stand so close, Sabine. You're making me look married." He said it softly, but not soft enough. 3 people near the bar heard him. One woman actually looked down at my hand like she was checking for the ring he suddenly wanted hidden. I did not cry. I did not slap him. I did not ask him who he was trying to impress. I just took off my wedding ring, walked across that polished ballroom floor, and placed it in the open palm of his boss, Rowena Sutter. She had been laughing like the room belonged to her. Then she looked at the ring, looked at my husband, and her face went still. "Garrick," she said, her voice suddenly cold, "leave my table, right now." And that was the first time I understood my marriage was not just broken, it had been used. My name is Sabine Whitaker Vale. I was 58 years old that December night, and I had been married to Garrick Vale for 32 years. For most of those years, I believed we were the kind of couple who had survived everything real life throws at people. We had survived layoffs, my breast scare, his father's death, raising 2 children, and the quiet loneliness that comes when a marriage stops being young but still has bills, laundry, doctor appointments, and Sunday dinners to carry. Garrick worked in private wealth management at Northline Crest Capital in Milwaukee. I taught English at a community college for 26 years before retiring early to help with our first grandbaby. I was never flashy. I was never the woman people noticed first in a room. But I was loyal. I was steady. And for a long time, I thought Garrick respected that. If you have ever been the dependable woman in someone else's life, the woman who packs the medicine, remembers the birthdays, saves the receipts, and keeps the house standing while everyone else chases applause, then you will understand why this story still hurts me to tell. The change started almost 2 years before the gala, when Northline Crest brought in Rowena Sutter as regional director. Garrick came home from his first meeting with her talking like a 25-year-old intern who had just been noticed by the Queen. Rowena was brilliant. Rowena was ruthless. Rowena had rebuilt a failing office in Denver. Rowena knew how to make men twice her size sit up straight. At first, I was happy for him. He had been stuck in the same position for years, and I knew he wanted one more big climb before retirement. Then the late nights started. Then the new cologne. Then the shirts that fit a little too perfectly for a man who used to buy whatever was on sale. He began taking calls in the garage, lowering his voice when I entered the kitchen, and smiling at texts that disappeared before I could even see who sent them. Every single thing had an explanation: a client emergency, a board dinner, a compliance issue, a last-minute portfolio review. One strange night can be explained. 10 strange nights become a pattern. The first real crack came in September, when I opened a joint account statement because the bank app would not load on Garrick's phone. We had always shared everything. Or I thought we did. That month, I saw 3 payments to a company called Ashbourne Strategy Group. The total was $18,400. I had never heard the name before. I asked him about it over breakfast, carefully, the way wives ask questions when they already know the answer may hurt. He did not even look up from his coffee. "Old tax planning thing," he said. "Don't worry about it." That was his mistake. After 32 years, I knew the difference between my husband forgetting a detail and my husband pushing a lie across the table, hoping I would be too tired to pick it up. So I did what older women are often very good at doing. I got quiet. I watched. I saved papers. I took screenshots. I stopped giving him the gift of my trust for free. My friend Inez Calder had spent 40 years as a bank auditor before retiring to grow tomatoes and scare young tellers with fraud stories. I took the statements to her one rainy Thursday and asked her what Ashbourne looked like. She read the paper twice, then removed her glasses and said, "Sabine, this is either sloppy consulting or a pipe." I asked what kind of pipe. She said, "Money goes in clean, comes out useful to someone dirty." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. Over the next few weeks, Inez helped me find public filings. Ashbourne's strategy group was registered to a woman named Tavia Dorn, who had once been Rowena Sutter's assistant in Denver. Tavia was also listed years earlier on a private LLC tied to Rowena's family trust. My hands shook so badly when I read that filing that I had to sit down at the kitchen table where I had once helped my children with spelling tests. Same table, different kind of lesson. By November, I had enough fear to call a lawyer. Her name was Lenora Pike, and she had the calm face of a woman who had watched many people discover the person sleeping beside them was not the person they thought they knew. I brought her statements, filings, dates, and copies of 2 home equity documents I did not remember signing. That was when her expression changed. Not shocked, focused. "Sabine," she said, "your name may have been used to move money. Before you confront your husband, we need to protect you. We need a timeline. We need proof of when you found this. And we need to make sure he cannot drain your accounts if he realizes you know." I wanted to feel dramatic. I wanted to feel brave. But mostly I felt old and foolish and tired. I kept thinking of all the nights I had warmed his dinner in the oven while he was out building a second life with another woman, and maybe using my name to pay for it. Then the invitation came. Northline Crest's winter gala at the Larkmore Club, a country club outside Milwaukee, with stone fireplaces and windows tall enough to make normal people feel small. Garrick told me I should come. That alone was strange. For the past 2 years, he had attended work events alone, saying spouses made things stiff. But this time, he wanted me there. "Rowena said it's good for senior leadership to look settled," he said. Settled. Not loved. Not proud. Settled. I said yes because Lenora had told me if I ever had a chance to see Garrick and Rowena together in a public room, I should take it. I did not plan revenge that night. I planned observation. But sometimes, life hands you the exact insult needed to stop being patient. If you have ever stayed quiet too long because you wanted proof, leave a comment in your own heart right now, because that kind of silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is preparation. The gala was beautiful in the cold way rich people like things to be beautiful. White flowers, silver candles, soft jazz, men laughing too loudly near the bourbon table, women smiling with their teeth, but not their eyes. I wore a navy dress Garrick once loved. He barely looked at me. For the first 20 minutes, he introduced me as my wife, Sabine, like he was reading a label on a storage box. Then he drifted toward Rowena. She wore red. Not bright red. Deep red. The kind that knows it will be noticed. I watched her touch his cuff when she laughed. I watched him lean close to hear her even when the room was not loud. I watched her place 2 fingers on his chest to stop him from walking away, and I watched him smile at her, like I had not seen him smile at me in years. The woman beside me, another wife with silver hair and tired eyes, whispered, "First time seeing it?" I turned to her. She looked away. That was when I knew other people had known before I did. I walked over because I refused to stand at the edge of my own marriage like a guest without a chair. Garrick was standing with Rowena and 3 partners near a high table. I reached for his arm the way I had done at church picnics, weddings, funerals, and grocery store aisles for 3 decades. He jerked away like my touch burned him. "Don't stand so close, Sabine," he said through his smile. "You're making me look married." For 1 second I heard nothing. Not the music, not the glasses, not the fake laughter. Just that sentence landing inside me and breaking the last thing I had been trying to protect. Then he added, still smiling, "Go find the spouse's table." That was the insult that saved me, because after that, there was nothing left to explain away. I took off my ring. It was a narrow gold band, scratched from years of dishes, children, suitcases, hospital chairs, An ordinary life. Garrick had bought it when we were poor, and I had worn it like a promise long after he stopped behaving like a husband. I walked past him and placed it in Rowena Sutter's palm. "I think this belongs at your table now," I said. Not loudly. I did not need volume. Quiet truth travels very far in a room full of people pretending not to listen. Rowena looked down. Then she looked at Garrick. Her face changed so fast it almost made me dizzy. Her confidence did not disappear because of the affair. Women like Rowena survive affairs. It disappeared because she understood I was not only talking about marriage. "Garrick," she said, "leave my table, right now." He tried to laugh. "Rowena, don't be dramatic." She closed her hand around my ring and said, "I said now." I could have walked out then, and maybe that would have been enough for some women. But I had spent months collecting proof while being treated like a fool in my own house. So I turned to the older man standing beside Rowena, a quiet partner named Bennett Harlow, and said, "You may also want to ask why Ashbourne Strategy Group has received payments from my joint account, and why its registered owner is tied to Ms. Sutter's Family, LLC." The whole table went silent. Not polite silent, dangerous silent. Rowena's mouth tightened. Garrick's face lost every bit of color. Bennett looked at me like he had just found a loaded gun under a napkin. "Who are you?" he asked. I said, "The wife whose name they used." That was all. Sometimes revenge is not screaming. Sometimes revenge is saying one clean sentence in front of the right witness. Garrick followed me into the parking lot 10 minutes later, furious in that frightened way guilty people get when they realize anger is the only costume left. Snow was falling lightly on the blacktop. He told me I had humiliated him. I almost laughed. After 32 years, after every lunch packed, every bill paid, every funeral stood through, every apology swallowed, he still thought the worst thing that happened that night was his embarrassment. "Tell me what Ashbourne is," I said. "Tell me before Bennett Harlow asks someone with a badge." That finally broke him. Not fully, but enough. He admitted Rowena had been moving client money through side entities for years. He admitted he found out, and instead of reporting her, he accepted consulting bonuses routed through Ashbourne. He admitted some of the money had touched our joint accounts because married accounts looked ordinary. Then he said the sentence that ended every soft memory I had left. "You never paid attention to the finances anyway." 3 days later, Lenora Pike filed emergency motions to separate my accounts and protect the house. I had already signed a sworn statement before the gala, dated and notarized, proving when I discovered the payments and what steps I took. Garrick did not know that. Rowena did not know that. They thought I was just an old wife with hurt feelings. By January, Northline Crest had opened an outside investigation. By March, Rowena Sutter had resigned before being terminated, which is what powerful people call falling while trying to make it look like stepping down. Garrick was fired for misconduct and later ordered to cooperate with investigators. The amount tied to the scheme was not the little $18,400 I first found. It was $1.7 million moved across several accounts over 4 years. My name had been used on 2 documents, but the signatures were electronic and traced back to Garrick's office computer. That little detail saved me. It also destroyed the last lie he had left. The hardest part was telling my daughter, Nella. She was 34, old enough to understand betrayal, young enough to still want her parents to be safe people. She cried in my kitchen while her 2 little boys watched cartoons in the next room. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" she asked. I told her the truth. Because mothers are trained to carry pain quietly until they know whether it will crush the children. But I also told her something I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Being loyal to a marriage does not mean staying blind for it. A husband can become a stranger. A wife can start over. And dignity is not something you lose because someone else treated you like you were disposable. The final twist came in April, from a phone call I almost did not answer. It was Bennett Harlow. He told me Northline Crest had found an internal email Rowena sent to Garrick 6 months before the gala. In it, she called me the harmless wife and wrote that using my name made the transfers look domestic and boring. Domestic and boring. I sat on my back porch after that call, looking at the flower beds I had planted every spring for 20 years, and I cried harder than I had cried the night of the party. Not because I missed Garrick, because I finally saw how small they had tried to make me. A harmless wife, a boring woman, a name on a form, a ring to hide when ambition entered the room. But that harmless wife kept the statements. That boring woman called the lawyer. That name on the form became the witness they could not erase. I divorced Garrick in August. I kept the house because Lenora proved he had exposed our marital property to financial risk without my informed consent. He moved into a short-term rental near the airport, which felt fitting for a man who had spent years trying to depart from his own life without admitting he had packed. Rowena's case continued longer, as powerful people's cases often do. She still had lawyers, friends, and polished statements about misunderstandings. But she did not have my ring anymore. Bennett mailed it back to me in a small velvet box, with a note that said, "You may not want this, but it should never have been hers to hold." He was right. I did not put it back on. I keep it in a drawer with old keys, expired passports, and other things that once opened doors I no longer need. I am 60 now. I drink coffee slower. I sleep better. I take my grandsons to the lake on Saturdays, and sometimes I still reach for the space on my finger where that ring used to be. Not because I want Garrick back. Habit is a ghost. The body takes time to release. What I learned is simple, but it cost me almost everything to learn it. Watch the pattern. Not one late night. Not one strange charge. Not one cruel sentence. The pattern. People will make you feel dramatic for noticing details because details are where truth hides before it becomes evidence. And if someone ever pushes your hand away in public after years of taking your loyalty in private, believe that moment. Sometimes humiliation is not the end of your dignity. Sometimes it is the door that opens and lets you finally walk out with your proof in your hand. Commentary. Before we move away from this story, let's slow down and talk about what really happened here. This was not only a story about a husband disrespecting his wife at a party. That public insult was only the moment when the truth finally came out in the open. When Garrick told Sabine that she made him look married, he was not just rejecting her hand. He was rejecting the life she had helped him build for more than 30 years. Now the powerful part is Sabine's reaction. She did not scream. She did not beg. She did not try to prove her worth in front of strangers. She simply removed her ring and placed it in the hand of the woman who had become part of the lie. That one quiet action said more than a long argument ever could. It showed pain, dignity, and control all at the same time. The deeper explanation of this story is that betrayal often starts small. A late call, a hidden payment, a new attitude, a cold answer. One thing alone may look harmless, but when all those small things connect, they create a pattern. Sabine's strength was not only in exposing the affair. Her real strength was in paying attention, saving proof, and protecting herself before confronting anyone. This story also shows how some people use loyal partners because they think loyalty means blindness. Garrick and Rowena thought Sabine was just a quiet wife who would never understand money, power, or fraud. But they were wrong. Her silence was not weakness. Her silence was preparation. The life lesson here is simple but important. Never ignore repeated disrespect. One insult can be forgiven, but a pattern reveals character. Also, do not confront people too early when you do not understand the full truth. Stay calm, collect facts, and protect yourself first. Emotional pain is real, but proof gives you power. In the end, Sabine did not only lose a husband, she found her own clarity. She learned that dignity does not come from being chosen by someone else. It comes from refusing to stand beside someone who is ashamed to claim you. And sometimes, the moment that breaks your heart is also the moment that finally saves your life.